Yeah.
And some are saying it's already started.
Yeah.
Would Ireland be part of that? You said about Britain.
It says all the nations of the world will be gathered together to the Battle of Armageddon.
Yes, that's right. So it will be.
It says all the nations of the world. And what will happen is that the 12 tribes of Israel in their modern form will be on one side and the entire world will be on the other. And they will be defeated.
Wow.
As a punishment, because they never kept the covenant, not the first nor the second. And all the problems in the world are the result of them not keeping the covenant, so they're going to be punished and go back into slavery for the third time.
So the first time was
Egypt. 400 years under the rule of men.
That's right, and Moses.
And then they were brought out under, you know, the whims and the rules of men, legislation, shall we say, today. And they were brought out under Moses. That was their training to learn what it was like in slavery, so that they would never want to go back into it again, hopefully. And then they were brought out with Moses to Sinai, to Mount Horeb. They were given the tablets of stone with the 10 Commandments and the 5 scroll books of the law, which is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers and Deuteronomy, which contain the law and the covenant, the statutes, the judgment, the agricultural policy, the economic policy under which there were no poor people, and the healthy balanced diet that kept their bodies from being sick. And they swore to the man that they would keep the law and teach it to their children in perpetuity forever, and they would keep it and live it and teach it to the rest of the world, which they never did. They allowed men to make up their own laws, like David, like Solomon, like Rehoboam, like all the way down to Elizabeth, to make up their own rules, to make themselves rich at the expense of everyone else, to just impoverish everybody else so they can live in the lap of luxury and have more money they could spend in 10 or 100 lifetimes, in Elizabeth's case. So they never kept the covenant, and so then they were all under the curses of the covenant, which meant death for the entire nation. So then there was the second Passover at the crucifixion, whereby the Lamb of God took all the sins of the world and was sacrificed instead of the entire nation, and offered a new covenant which they've never kept also. So if they will not keep the covenant, they're going back into slavery again. They had 2 periods of slavery. The 10-tribed house of Israel were taken into Assyria as slaves, and the 2-tribed house of Judah were taken into Babylon as slaves. So they had the first slavery, all 12 tribes together in Egypt. The second period of slavery was the 10 tribes in Assyria and the 2 tribes in Babylon. And the third one, because they never learned, they will not do as they're told, so they're going to go back into slavery again for a third and final time. And that's what will happen after the Battle of Armageddon.
That senses on the that it could be any time, couldn't it?
Yes, Britain and America are going to lose, and the 12 tribes are going to lose, and they're going to go into slavery. Over the last few hundred years, they have been protected whilst ever they were witnessing and taking the Bible around the world, translating it into all the different languages. So that's why they were the 2 witnesses. Britain and America are the 2 nations that witnessed for God. They translated the Bible into every human language and took it all over the world, witnessing.
Cool.
But they never lived by it. And not living by it is what drove the rest of the world into the arms of Satan and communism. Because they said, well, this is the Bible, but, you know, this is how it's going to be, and ripping everybody off. And so people said, well, if that's the Bible, we don't want it. We'll become communists, which is a satanic atheist system. And so they drove the people into the arms of Satan. Instead of being a blessing to the whole world, they have been a curse. So they're going to be punished. Over those years, they were protected. They always had the best technology. Like in the Second World War, they had the Spitfire. Okay, and Goering asked
Do you know how that came about, by the way?
the Spitfire.
Yeah.
Well, it came from father.
Yeah, but there was a lady called Lady Houston, whose husband was a few years older than her, and he was in industrialist paints, chemicals and stuff.
Yeah.
Very, very rich. But she was born again,
Right.
and she had a chance meeting with Mr. Mitchell at a party on the south coast, and she had a yacht moored down wherever it was. I don't think it could have been Weymouth. I'm not quite sure, but there's a film on it. And in the end, she was the one that paid the money to get 500 Spitfires made because the government was broke.
Yeah. Well, it's still broke. Somebody
And
ought
it's
to
still
fix
broke.
it, didn't they?
That's right.
So anyway, during the Second World War, the head of the Luftwaffe,
Mm.
when they were fighting in the Battle of Britain and all that, and Hitler asked the head of the Luftwaffe, "What can I get you to win the war?"
Mm.
And he said, "Get me some Spitfires." And Hitler was not amused, he was not pleased, but it was the best plane. And then we have the Hawker Harrier, the jump jets, and all of that, and we're always protected until they are now going to be not protected, they are going to be punished because they have never kept the covenant. So now all of the technology has been given to the Russians and the Chinese, and the Russian aeroplanes and missiles, everything are way ahead of America and Britain. Because they're going to win, they're going to defeat Britain and America as a punishment. God punishes Israel by the rod of men. He uses other nations to punish them when
But
they
it's-
do wrong.
But the Israel that you're talking about is not.
Is not the people in Israel, in the Holy Land. They are not Israel. They are Ashkenazi and Idumean counterfeit Jews. They do not have one drop of Jacob Israel's blood in their veins. They are not even Semites. This is a big joke and a big misnomer. They are not even Semites. The Ashkenazi are descended from Ashkenaz.
Yes.
And Ashkenaz was the grandson of Japheth, not Shem, from whom the Semites are descended. So they're not even Semites. So all this anti-Semitism is an absolute joke, because they're not Semites. We're the Semites. And they have absolutely no right to even 1 square inch or centimetre of the Holy Land. You cannot return to somewhere where your ancestors have never lived. They are Khazars from Khazaria, which is where Georgia is, and the Ukraine and things. They were never in the Holy Land. They've stolen the name Israel, they've stolen the name Jew, and they've stolen the land from true Israel, which is the British. Because the word British is Hebrew, Berit or Brit. In Hebrew means the covenant, and Ish means man. So it's covenant man. God's only ever made one covenant, that was with Israel. So the British are Israel. End of story.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But I was telling you about the 7 times in prophecy. It's all there. Even Peter said, you know, above the voice that came out of the bright cloud, the spaceship, saying, "This is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased." Okay? Simon Peter said, above even that, we have the sure word of prophecy. 2/3 of the Bible is prophecy, which 99.9% of has already been fulfilled in exact and minute detail. Only an absolute raving lunatic would think that the remaining 0.1% will not.
Sorry.
Only a raving lunatic would think that the remaining 0.1% of the prophecy will not also be fulfilled in exact and minute detail. And that 1% includes Britain and America, the 2 witnesses, being defeated in the Third World War and those who are not killed going into slavery.
Well,
And after that will come the reaping and the collection of the 144,000.
Now, you mentioned a spaceship thing. You mentioned the word spaceship.
Yes, I did, yeah. The bright clouds, or the clouds, cloud of smoke by day and a fire in the sky by night, which was over Mount Horeb when Moses was there, was a spaceship hidden within a smoke screen. During the daytime, you couldn't see it because of the smoke. During the night time, with the lights on the craft, shone through the smoke, and it was like a fire in the sky by night. The Star of Bethlehem was a spaceship. The New Jerusalem is a city that comes down out of the sky, already prepared by God.
Yep.
It is an absolutely enormous, and I mean enormous, spaceship. And on the Mount of Transfiguration, the bright cloud, and out of the cloud came the voice, "This is my beloved Son, hear him," was also a spaceship. All of this is explained in The Way Home or Face the Fire, the book that is the key to understanding all Scripture, Old Testament, New Testament, and Quran. All Scripture. And without reading and studying that book and living it, you will never ever understand Scripture, never ever understand the Bible, and certainly will never ever understand the prophecies.
And you say the Bible, which Bible are you talking of?
My Bible, the King of Kings Bible, which has the Old Testament and the Book of Enoch put back in it, which they took out.
Yeah.
And the New Testament, it also has the Book of TEPHI in it. And then the New Testament, which I've put in the Gospel of Thomas, which is actually the best teaching gospel of all of them, which is why they took it out of the Bible. And the 29th chapter of Acts, which tells you where Paul came to Britain. And he taught in Britain on Ludgate Hill, which is where St. Paul's Cathedral was eventually built.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, and also it contains the Quran, correctly interpreted, correctly translated and interpreted. And all three books are cross-referenced. And it's on a CD called the Armageddon Survival Kit. And it is an electronic version whereby all of the links, the cross-references, are linked. And when you click on them, it opens them at the bottom of the page, the window. So you don't lose where you are in the Bible, but you've got the cross-reference to read at the bottom, and then you can click on another one, it will change to the next cross-reference. And so all three books are cross-referenced with each other to prove that they are from the same source, and they were always meant to be one book. And nobody reading a third of a book can ever understand the message of the book. If you have a book and you read the first third, you have no idea what the story is. If you have a book and you read the middle third of it, you have no idea about the beginning or the end of it. And if you read the last third, you have no idea where it all came from. Okay, so the so-called Jews claim to read the Old Testament and nothing else. So they don't have any idea of what the whole message is and the truth is, because they only read the first third of the book. The so-called Christians, some of them maybe read the Old Testament, but they concentrate on the New Testament, so then they ignore the Old Testament because they say that Jesus abolished the law, the covenant 2,000 years ago, which is an absolute lie that is actually proven in the New Testament in Matthew 5:17. Okay, and then you have the Muslims who ignore both of the previous books and read only the Quran. And so none of them, they're all absolutely clueless. Not one of them has got any idea what the whole story is and what they're supposed to be doing and why. And all of that is explained in The Way Home or Face the Fire, which is on my website. But it's also at thewayhomeorfacethefire.net, and it's a free PDF download. So everybody can download it and read it, and they have absolutely no excuse for not doing so.